Hello everyone. Today we're going to make a game with GameMaker Studio with GML code. Let me give you an example of what we're going to make. So we have a player that moves and shoots in 4 directions, and once all the enemies are cleared, a portal will appear so we can warp to the next level, and we can determine which enemy needs to be destroyed in order for the portal to appear. So here we determined that the second enemy needed to be destroyed. So if you enjoy content revolving around video games, please consider dropping a like and subscribing. Let's start off by clicking a new project, new game. We'll call this one Shooter. I think I have one already. Okay, cool. Okay, so the first thing that we're going to do, we're going to create a player sprite. We'll right click on the sprites folder, create sprite. We'll call this SPR player. And we'll import an image, and all the images will be included in the link below. So let's look for the player. Okay, let's center the sprite. Center. So now that we have our sprite, let's create the object for it. Right click the objects folder, create object, and we'll call this one obj player. Assign it the obj sprite, obj SPR player. All right, so let's go ahead and start doing the movement. We'll click add event, step, and we're gonna do GML code. Don't ask for this project and click OK. All right, so type in the following code. Move left equals, keyboard. Let's see, keyboard check direct. Okay. Okay, so we're gonna create a variable for each of our movements. So let's copy this and then we can paste this 4 times or 3 more times. And let's adjust this. We'll say right. This will be D. This will be up. Will be W. And down will be S. Okay, so don't worry about these here. This is just saying that you've created a variable, but you haven't used it. And we're going to use it right now. So let's go ahead and start writing the movement. So we'll say if move left. Okay, curly bracket. We want them to go on along the x-axis to the left. So we're going to do x minus equal 4. So if we wanted it to go to the right, it would be plus. And we're also going to change the sprite angle. We're going to say image angle. An image angle is a built-in GameMaker variable. And we're going to say 180 for 180 degrees. And then we can close that off. And then we're going to finish the rest of the movements. So let's just copy this and then paste it 3 more times. Okay, so this one will be right. So this will be plus. And then the image angle will be 0. This will be up. But this time we want to go on the y-axis. Okay. And then down. We want to go on the y-axis. Oh, I forgot the image angle for up. This should be 90. And this should be 270. 270. Okay, so now we can test this out. Let's go into our room. So I'm gonna make the room a little smaller just to work, just so it's easier to work with. So I'm gonna change it to 800 by 600. You don't have to do the same, but this is just so I have a smaller workspace. And I'm gonna drag the OBJ player onto here, and then we're gonna test to see if the player moves. Oops. Oh, it looks like we have some coding issues here. Oh, whoops. Forgot to put a plus here. Beautiful. Okay. All right, so let's continue. So now we're gonna make a wall. So let's right click the sprites, create sprite. We'll name this SPR wall. Import a wall sprite. We're gonna leave the origin at the top left. And let's see. Let's create the object for it. Right click objects, create object. Name it OBJ wall. And we'll assign it the wall sprite. Let's go back into the OBJ player. So we could double click OBJ player. Add event, collision, objects, OBJ wall. And we're basically gonna stop when we collide. So we'll call this speed equals 0. Now let's go into the room and we'll click on the OBJ wall. I'm gonna hold Alt and I'm gonna kind of paint over. And this is why I don't, it doesn't really matter, but I don't center block sprites because I like the block to fit right nicely in the square. It's just my preference. And now let's test the game. And the player should stop moving when it collides with the wall. Oops. Ah, we forgot to check solid. We'll go to OBJ wall and we'll make this solid. Okay. Play. There you go. Doesn't go through the walls. So now let's create the enemy. Right click sprites, create sprite. We'll name this SPR enemy and we'll import the enemy image. So this sprite in particular tends to get stuck. So I'm gonna widen its collision mask. I'm gonna go to manual and I'm just gonna pull this out just a little bit. Well, not really a little bit, but so hopefully it'll prevent it from getting stuck. And we'll put the origin to center. Okay, should be good. Now let's make the object for it. Right click the objects folder, create object. And we'll name this OBJ enemy and give it the OBJ enemy sprite. Click add event, create. And we're gonna call this direction. This is a built-in GameMaker variable. And we'll say 180 for 180 degrees. So we'll start moving, I think that's to the left. And then we'll say speed, we'll go into a speed of 5. Okay, now we have to make a collision event with the wall. So let's go add event, collision, OBJ wall. And we're gonna type move, bounce, all. Say false. Okay, so now we should be able to test it. Let's open up the room, drag OBJ enemy. Okay, great. All right, so now let's make the enemy shoot. We'll make a sprite for the enemy bullet. Create sprite. We'll name it OBJ E bullet for enemy bullet. We'll import the enemy bullet sprite, center it, and create the object for it. name obj e bullet and give it, oops, oh, sorry, I named the sprite obj spre bullet, sorry about that, and this will be obj e bullet. Give it the sprite. So let's go back into the enemy now. Double click obj enemy, and we'll go into the create event, and let's type in alarm set. So we're gonna set alarm 0 to execute in 40 frames. So now let's go ahead and let's dictate what happens when that alarm triggers. So we'll go add event, alarm 0. And then we're gonna say instance create layer. We'll call it X, Y, and then instances, quotation marks, obj enemy, I'm sorry, e bullet. And we can close that. That's it. And then we'll reset the alarm. Alarm 0. So we'll set it so it could execute again. Oops, alarm set. Okay, now go into the obj e bullet and then add event, create. And here we'll type direction. So we want it to go in the direction of the player. So we'll write point direction. X, Y, and then, so this is the starting. This is where the e bullet will start. And then we want it to go to obj player dot x obj player dot y. And we want it to go at a speed of 5. Let's go back into the eBullets event window, add event, collision, obj player, and we'll write instance destroy. We also have to do that for the wall. So add event, collision, obj wall. We'll do the same thing. Instance destroy. And now let's test the game out. All right, great. All right, so let's continue. All right, now we're gonna make the player shoot. Let's go ahead and make the sprite for that bullet. Create sprite. We'll call this one SPR P bullet for player. We'll import the player bullet sprite, center it, and make an object for it. Create object, obj P bullet, we'll name it, and give it the P bullet sprite. Now, first of all, we need to make a variable that will hold the player's direction, and that will determine what direction the bullet will travel in. So let's go back into the obj player object, double click on obj player. We're going to add event, create, and we're going to create two variables. One of them is going to be a global variable. So write global dot, and we're going to call this facing direction, and we're going to set it to 0. And this is just basically initializing it. And this value 0 is going to change later, but right now we're just going to create the variable. And we're going to create a variable that's going to hold uh, if we can shoot or not. So we'll call it ammo and we'll assign it to 1. So what we want to do now is we want to tie this to when we go ahead and hit those buttons. Like, for example, let's go into the step event. Whenever we move left, we want this variable to change. We want it to say left or right. And again, we'll find out what direction the player is facing. And when we shoot, we'll find out if he's facing up, we want to shoot up, and so on and so forth. So let's go ahead and do that. Let's go back into the step event. And we're going to add this code in between line 8 and 9 over here. So let's just press enter over here. And I'm going to put global dot facing direction. I can just hit enter. And we're just going to call it left. And I can call this whatever I want. This is something that I'm making up, but this is just so I can reference this. If someone else looks at this code, they can figure out what you're talking about. So we're going to do that for the rest of the directions. Okay, this one would be right. This one would be up. And then this one will be down. Okay. And then later you're going to see how we're going to refer to this global variable. Now, the reason it needs to be global is because an outside object needs to access this information. Okay. So let's go ahead. Let's continue. So now that we have the sprite and the object, let's go ahead and we're within the OBJ player window. We'll click add event, key pressed, and we'll use space. So here we're going to write if ammo is equal to 1, instance create layer X, Y instances. Make sure you don't misspell that. OBJ P bullet for player. Okay. And then we're going to set, so ammo is already at 1, so he's going to be able to shoot. So we want to be able to, let's go back here. We want to set the ammo back to 0 because we don't want our player to constantly be shooting. We want to kind of control it with an alarm. And we're going to do that on the next line. We'll set alarm 0. So again, every object has a total of 12 alarms. So we'll say alarm 0. We'll set it at 40 frames. And then we can close this now. Okay, now this right now, I think the player would only be able to shoot once because it sets the ammo to 0. And right now, if ammo is equal to 1, it's not. It's equal to 0, so it's not going to execute this. So we just have to create an alarm event, and we're going to set that variable, that ammo variable, back to 1. So let's click add event, alarm 0, and this sets ammo back to 1. Ammo equals 1. Okay, so now let's go into the OBJP bullet. Now we'll click add event, create. And this is what we're going to write. If global dot facing direction is equal to left. So we're checking to see what direction the player is facing in. And then we're going to say horizontal speed equals -5. That means it'll travel on the horizontal axis to the left because we're putting -5. Okay. And we're going to continue. We're going to say else if global dot facing direction is equal to right. we'll say h speed equals 5. Close it. Or I could just do this. I could just copy this. Oops. Should have been doing this the whole time. Here and then here. So we have left, right. This one will be up. And this, instead of horizontal, we'll call it V speed. For vertical speed, we'll call this negative. And then down, this should be positive. Okay, let's see if that works. Oops. Okay, we made a mistake on down. Oh, I probably set. Okay, let's go back to the down. I left it at H speed, so V speed, change that to V speed, and we should be good. Okay, perfect. All right, so now let's make some enemy health. So we're gonna go into obj enemy. We're gonna go to the create event, and then we're gonna create a variable. We'll call it enemy HP equal to 2. So the enemy will have 2 hit points. You can adjust it to whatever you'd like, but we'll do 2 for now. So now let's do add event collision with the objp bullet. And we want to say enemy HP minus equal 1. So every time it makes contact with the P bullet, it'll lose an HP. And we want the bullet to be destroyed, and we can code it here. So let's just write with other instance destroy. Okay. So we're saying here when the bullet hits, it'll bring enemies HP down to 1, and the bullet will destroy itself. And then here we'll say if enemy HP is less than 1, we'll say instance destroy, and this will affect the enemy. Notice I don't have other, so. All right, so the enemy should be destroyed in 2 shots, and the P bullet should be destroyed once it makes contact with the enemy. Excellent. All right, let's continue. So let's make player health. But before we do that, let's make a controller object, and this is gonna hold some important information, like how much health the player has, how many lives the player has, and this will hold what level the player's on, and we're gonna use that later. So let's create a new object. We don't have to create a sprite for this. Let's just right-click the objects, create object. We'll call this obj controller. And we don't need a sprite for this. We do want to check persistent. This is so all of the information persists when we warp to levels. If we don't have this checked, it's a possibility that the player's health could reset every time it goes to a new level. So make sure you hit persistent. And let's create those variables. Let's create. And again, outside objects will need to access this information. So we need to make these variables global. So we'll say global health at 100. Global lives will be 3. And we're gonna start off the level at 1. Global level, equals 1. Okay, so let's go back into our obj player object by double clicking it. Double click step to open that up. And let's add this at the bottom. if global.health is less than or equal to 0, we're going to say global lives, we're going to lose a life. So minus equals 1. And we have to set the health back to 100. So global dot health equals 100. We could close this. And then I'm going to make another one. If global dot lives is less than or equal to 0. So this is what happens when we don't have any lives. We'll say game restart. All right, so let's go back into this event window. We're going to go add event, collision with the OBJ e-bullet. And we'll say global dot health minus equals 10. So this is where you can set how much damage your player will take every time it makes contact with the e-bullet. And we also want the e-bullet to be destroyed. So with other instance destroy. And now let's go ahead and draw a health bar so we can see how much health we have. So we'll click add event, draw. So now that we have a draw event, we must have a draw self or else it won't draw the character. Okay. And now let's type this in, draw health bar. And we're going to type in a couple of things here. 32, 32, 250, and 50. So this is the first X and Y coordinate of the square that's going to be drawn. And this is the second X and Y. So I'll give you an example. I'm going to start drawing the health bar at 32, 32. So if you go into the room, 32, 32 is about here. These blocks are 32 pixels long, so we'll go 32x, 32y. This is where the first X and Y axis of the rectangle is going to be, and I want it to end somewhere like around here. And as you can see in the bottom, it'll show you exactly the X and Y axis. So I want the health bar to be like this big from here to here. Okay, so that's what I'm writing over here. Let's go back to the OBJ player. So the first X and Y axis, the second X and Y axis of the rectangle. And what value are we going to be drawing? We're going to be drawing global health. Okay. And then these are a couple. So if you ever want to find out what exactly GameMaker is asking of you, here you can see X. This is what I was just explaining. The first X and Y coordinates of the health bar, back color, the amount, like what it's going to grab, back color, minimum, maximum color, and things like that. So let's finish this up. Okay, that should be it. Okay, now we have to add this object into the room. So let's go back into the room. We'll take OBJ controller, we'll drag it right here. And let's test it out. And there's our health bar. And as you can see, every time we get hit, we will lose 10 life. And then if we, oh, I gotta widen the collision mask there. But anyway, let's see what happens when the player loses all of its life. It'll reset the game. So again, the reason why the sprite, this one in particular, I don't really like this sprite just because that happens. So you either want to use a different sprite or, yeah, see, it's not a good sprite, or widen the collision mask. All right, so let's make a portal to go and warp to the next room. Let's make a sprite for it. Okay. We'll call this SPR portal. We'll import the portal. Looks like a bridge. And for this one, we're gonna put the origin for top right, and I'll show you why in a moment. Let's make an object for that. Create object. We'll name it obj portal and give it the portal sprite. All right, so let's go into our enemy. Double click the obj enemy. So in the collision event with the obj p bullet, we have to put this code in between the last two lines. So let's make a space here. So we want to make sure we're inside this curly bracket. And here we go. So first of all, we're going to check the level. And this is helpful if you want to determine which enemy needs to be destroyed. It doesn't always have to be all of the enemies. You can make it, you can determine uh, who gets destroyed on which level. So this is the reason why I included this. So we have to put an exclamation mark. This means not. So instance exists. This means if the instant doesn't exist, and we're gonna say obj enemy. Obj enemy. Okay. Open bracket. Instance create layer. And these are the coordinates that I'm gonna use. 7680 and the origin being at the right allows me to use this these coordinates here. Instances. Oops, that's not correct. Instances. And we want the obj portal to appear. All right, so let's test this out. Oh, looks like I haven't. Oh, okay, I have to close this. So let's do this. And there we go. That should be it. Okay. So now the portal should appear if the enemy is destroyed. Okay. And the reason why I had that exact coordinate because I want to kind of make it look like a bridge and the tank is going over the bridge. Let's go back into the OBJ player. We'll click add event, collision, OBJ portal. And then here we're going to say go to the next room. So we'll say room, go to next. And every time we teleport, we want to add 1 to the level to make it level 2 and so on and so forth. So we'll say plus equals 1. Okay. Now let's make another room. We could duplicate this room. Duplicate. But we have to do one thing that's very important or else we're going to get errors. So let's take care of that very quickly. We'll name this room 2. We must delete this right here. Okay. This only needs to be, this OBJ controller only needs to be in the first room. That's all. If you put the OBJ controller here, it's going to give, maybe not errors, but it's going to give unwanted behavior. It may reset your health, and you don't want that. Okay, so now that we have this here, let's see if the portal appears and if it takes us to the next room. Okay, let's go over the bridge. Boom. And we're in the second room. All right, let's continue. So let's make a second enemy now. Let's make a sprite for it. Create sprite. We'll name this one SPR enemy 2. We'll give it an image and center it. And now we're going to right click OBJ enemy and duplicate it. We'll call this one enemy 2. Open it up and assign it the enemy 2 sprite. Okay. We're going to change this up a little bit. We want this enemy to be stationary. We don't want him to move. So let's go to create and we're going to delete these 2 lines. You can comment them out if you want by holding Control K. And to uncomment it, you can hit Control Shift K. Okay, so right now we don't want that. So we'll hit Control K to comment that out, or you can delete it if you'd like. All right, so let's go into the collision with the P bullet. And this is where we're going to modify this code up a little bit. So we're going to add here both of these enemies. So let's copy all of this. Copy. And we're going to put double and. We're going to paste that and we're going to say obj enemy 2 here. So we're saying if it's the first level and the enemy and enemy 2 don't exist, then we want the portal to appear. We do have some errors here. Oh, this one right here. That should be it. Okay. Make sure you delete that extra parentheses there. Okay, we're not done yet though. We're gonna say if level 2 as well. Okay, so let's put this next code in between the last 2 curly brackets. Let's copy all of this. Yeah, let's copy all of that. Copy. And we're gonna put that down here. And we're gonna modify this. We're gonna say level 2. And we only want obj enemy 2. So this is just an example. We'll delete that. Let's see. Oh, yeah, and now we have to close it, I think. With another, yep, parentheses. And I think this is it. So here, this is what we're saying. If it's the first level, we want these 2 enemies to be destroyed in order for the portal to show up. But if we're on level 2, we only want it to destroy enemy 2. We don't have to have both of them destroyed. Now we're going to take this whole code and we're going to paste it into the first enemy, just to make sure there's no errors here or no unwanted behavior. So we'll copy all of this. We'll go into the obj enemy and we're just going to paste it right over. Okay. So now let's see if this works the way that we want it. Oh, there's one thing that we forgot to do. We need to add in obj enemy into the room. So let's add obj enemy in room 1 and also in room 2. So we want the portal to appear only if both of the enemies are destroyed. So that's good. And on this one, we want the portal to appear only if this enemy is destroyed. Good. Okay. Perfect. All right. Let's add a background to this. So let's go to make a new sprite. Create sprite. We'll call this BR background. and we'll import the background sprite. Now let's go into the room and let's put that background in. Double click background and then select the background sprite. And we want to stretch it. And next, room 2. Let's do the same thing. Let's do another sprite. And let's name it as BR background 2 and import that sprite. Go into room 2, backgrounds, give it that background and stretch it. And now this game should look a lot nicer. So there you have it. I hope you enjoyed. Hope you learned something. Let's see. Let's just test this out one more time. There you go. And we can teleport to the next level. So I hope you enjoyed. If you like this content, please consider subscribing. I do content on everything surrounding video games. So if you like that, please like and subscribe. And I will see you in the next one. Bye-bye.